news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, November 3rd. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 1 degree. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. LRT issues has prompted a monetary warning letter from the province to the city. The province has contributed $1.8 billion to construction of Phase 1 and Phase 2 of light rail in Ottawa. In a letter to the city, the Ministry of Transportation says because of issues with Phase 1, including 3 under review or investigation by the Transportation Safety Board, it wants assurances for the safety of that system. The province not releasing a $60 million holdback on Phase 1 funding until 3 conditions are met. They are confirmation of the TSB investigation into cracked wheels being released, also completion of derailment investigation, and confirmation from the independent engineer that industry standards were followed in the construction of Phase 1 LRT. More on this story coming up on the Rob Snow Show with the Liberal MPP John Fraser at 9:15 this morning. City News Time 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
We'll have varying amounts of sun and cloud through the area today. The high 6 degrees will drop to -4. Chilly overnight, mainly clear. Tomorrow, sun, few clouds at times, the high near 7. For today, the high 6.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 1 degree. The city will present the draft budget this morning at council that starts at 10 o'clock. There are concerns increasing the city transit fare might not be affordable for the city and its riders. Here's City News reporter Prushka Gopalkista.
Since the pandemic, there has been low ridership within the city's transit system. Although the city has mandated the 2.5% increase for the transit fare, there are concerns that if that fare does go up again, it won't be affordable. Councillor Matthew Fleury says that although there are many concerns about the budget, he adds that being consistent with those solutions will help improve the system.
We have to be coherent and consistent in those investments and those efforts, but there's certainly a reality of operational pressures relating to the lower ridership and the fees we collect from ridership usually that are not there yet.
Also at this morning's council meeting, the Ottawa Police Service will also reveal what their budget could look like. The final budget will be tabled by City Council on December 8th. Pirishka Gopalkista, City News.
City News Time 9:02. The province's top doctor, Kieran Moore, will be updating booster shots for COVID vaccine at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Details of who can get the booster and when is expected. This would include those people who received a double dose of AstraZeneca's vaccine, as well as more people in certain age groups. Also, with COVID vaccinations, we are waiting for Health Canada's go-ahead on the shot in children ages 5 to 11. The United States began doling out shots to that age group today after the Centers for Disease Control gave its go-ahead. A dog will be put down after it attacked a child. This happened in Orleans on Halloween night. Ottawa bylaw says the dog owner is now facing 3 charges. Paramedics say the child suffered traumatic injuries and was taken to hospital. The age of the child has not been released. Bylaw says the breed of dog was an American bulldog owned by a rescue organization. And David Cohen, a tech executive who once served as chief of staff to the mayor of Philadelphia, is the next U.S. ambassador to Canada. Cohen is a lawyer who also served as a senior advisor and chief diversity officer at U.S. communications giant Comcast. He'll be involved in discussions to make sure Canada's policies reflect its words in terms of the treatment of China. Canada has yet to formally say whether it plans to block Huawei equipment from being used in the country's expanding 5G network. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's got the news and the views.
He's got views on the news.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Wednesday. And oh, what a day in the news game it is already. There's big news already. There's a fight up brewing between Doug Ford and Jim Watson over light rail. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show on City News. Are you in the right place today? I was wondering if something like this was going to happen, if the Ford government would ever say anything about what's been going on with light rail in this city. I mean, after all, as much as light rail is a legacy project for Mayor Watson and many of the city councillors, I mean, light rail doesn't get this far or go any further without money from the provincial government. No provincial money, no light rail. And it's really as easy as that. Phases 1, Phase 2, they don't happen without money from Queen's Park. And look at the performance of Phase 1 so far. How many days has it been today without a functioning light rail system in the city of Ottawa? This is the, look here, 45th day. It's so patently absurd. 45 days without light rail. How would that go over in Toronto? 45 days without the TTC or GO trains. Can you imagine? Or Montreal or New York City or London or any other city that claims and aims to be a world-class city, and yet, 45 days no light rail in Ottawa. I was wondering, just given the billions of dollars that the provincial government has committed to these projects, going back more than a decade now, and now it's under pressure to cough up even more money for Phase 3 of light rail. The provincial government has not done that. Phase 3 would get out further out into Canada, out to Barrhaven. I was wondering whether the Ford government would ever say something like, you know what, Ottawa? With all due respect, we're big believers in public transit. We fund public transit projects all across Ontario. But we really need you in Ottawa to get your act together on public transit before our government can ever commit any more dollars from the taxpayers of all of Ontario to expanding light rail in Ottawa. Well. Today could be that day. There is a letter. I have a copy of the letter. It was sent to the top transit people here in Ottawa. It is from the top transportation people from the provincial government. The Minister of Transport in the Ford government is CC'd on this letter, Caroline Mulroney. And it says, get your act together, Ottawa. Get your act together. Or we're not going to send you $60 million that is apparently due at some point to pay for light rail Phase 1. This is all part of the funding agreement that was reached back in 2011. If you can imagine, that's how long it's been. That was a decade ago. So the province wants assurances on things like derailments. Hey, why don't you make sure those don't happen anymore? Flat wheels. Can you try and keep them round? Get a handle on this situation. But, and this is the curious part, it is giving the city lots of track, so to speak. The city has until the end of the year? No, the end of next year. You have until the end of next year to convince us at the provincial level that you've got all of this sorted out and hopefully, fingers crossed here, by the end of next year, it will all be sorted out. But the timing is so curious. There's a provincial election in 7 months, first of all. PC seats are at stake here in the Ottawa area. And I just wonder if maybe this could be some political ammunition, for local PC candidates. LRT is a political wedge issue here in Eastern Ontario. We're going to get into this morning on the Rob Snow Show. Think about the timing. Okay, when does this hit the news? Oh, budget day at the City of Ottawa. Like already a big news day. Big news day for the mayor, right? Mayor Watson, by the way, his office sent us a statement to City News claiming, there's not really much to this. The province really doesn't have anything to worry about. But the timing of this letter making news, it's curious to say the least. Draft budget day. That will consume the city council meeting today. Our friends at Rogers Television will soon leave the Rob Snow Show, and they'll broadcast the city council meeting for you if that's your thing, and we'll have coverage of that meeting as well. If federal politics is your thing, we've got you covered. Every Wednesday, we score our political fix with the help of great political analysts like today, Susan Smith, Chris Day. Lots to talk about. I mean, the big Canadian political story of the week is not even happening in Canada. It's happening in Scotland. COP26, Climate Change Conference, Prime Minister touting his carbon tax. And what a great thing the carbon tax will be when it hits $170 a ton, jacking up the price of gasoline by another 40 cents a liter. And then encouraging other countries to follow our lead. Also announcing a hard cap on emissions from the oil and gas sector, and only the oil and gas sector, interpreted far and wide as a shot at the West, and Jason Kenney is so unpopular that he is powerless to mount a credible defense. Yeah, we're going to get into that. Also, I'll ask them what I think is certainly one of the more intriguing political rebrands right now. Doug Ford, working class hero. Doug Ford, working class hero. The minimum wage, big news yesterday. Smokey Thomas is there, big union leader. Jerry Dias, big union leader. Oh, the NDP must be loving to see that. Doug Ford with the big union leaders. Minimum wage going to $15 an hour. But a whole host of other measures being introduced by the Ford government ahead of next summer's provincial election. Things like easier recognition of foreign credentials, end to non-compete clauses, the right to disconnect, rumored to be something on the way for gig economy workers, Uber drivers, and the like. So if you're working for a living, Doug Ford wants to be your best friend because you know him. He's in it for the little guy. In it for the little guy. His political opponents, as you can imagine, they don't quite see it that way. He's been more in it for Walmart and Costco during the pandemic. We'll have one of his political critics on the show this morning, John Fraser, coming up here in a few minutes' time, Ottawa South Liberal MPP. And later in the show, Ford government cabinet minister, the labor minister, Monty McNaughton. He'll be here as well. And you're in the middle of it all. During every Rob Snow show, we do the Talk Back Hour every morning between 10 and 11 o'clock. It is an hour of phone calls. It's an hour of opinions, hottest hour of talk radio in town. Just ask around. And we're going to get into something a little bit different this morning. We're going to talk about, get your opinions on Gen Z. Okay, Gen Z, Generation Z, is basically anyone under the age of 25. You're Gen Z. I don't know what comes after Gen Z, but you're Gen Z. If you're under 25. I want to ask you this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully, we're coming out of this pandemic. Fingers crossed. I want to kind of go this morning, big picture. You know, so many news stories are related to this. You know, think about minimum wages, working conditions, the future of work, the high cost of housing affordability, government spending, government programs, debt deficit, future costs for health care, Social Security, retirement security, all of these things. I want to ask you about the prospects for Gen Z, okay? The under 25s. I'm going to ask you the same question that I used to ask you about millennials. And that is, do you think the next generation, okay, Gen Z, will be better off or worse off than previous generations? I've been been giving this some thought. It's been bouncing around in my head. Will a 20-something or teenager have a better quality of life, have a higher standard of living than their parents or their grandparents? People used to ask that question all the time about millennials. But you know what? The millennials are all grown up now. The next generation is Gen Z. How do their prospects look? Think about it and talk back right after the 10 o'clock news. This is The Rob Snow Show on City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them, and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our Pamper Items. So your Pamper Items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes, they're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Okay, is there a fight brewing between the Ontario government and the municipal government here in Ottawa over light rail funding? And let's talk about Doug Ford, a worker's best friend, $15 an hour minimum wage, Liberal MPP, Ottawa South. John Fraser back with me on the Rob Snow Show this morning. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Rob. I think you're firm, fair, and fun, but you're also frugal, so maybe they should add that to the... I haven't bought gas in the last little
John
while.
and I are obsessed with the price of gas now. Every time I talk to John, what's the price of gas? No, because you do drive around at night looking for cheap gas. I know you,
I do,
John.
yes,
I know you, John. Okay.
I do, yeah.
All right. John, I'm sure you've read the news reports now about this letter that was sent from higher-ups in the Department of Transport down at Queen's Park to the top transit people here in the city of Ottawa. And it's basically a list of all the things that the provincial government would like to be assured are all worked out before $60 million of provincial funding is advanced to the municipality to cover the bill for phase 1 of light rail. What do you think about this letter now?
I don't know if it's really helpful. I think everybody, no matter what side of the situation you view what's going on right now, just wants the rail to be up, running safely and efficiently without interruption. Now, I don't know how the letter gets us there, because I think that partners, which I believe the province and the federal government are, came together to do this thing. Partners need to say, look, we know that there's some challenges with this. We've got resources through Metrolinx and the Ministry of Transportation. We're here to help you. And by the way, if you have any further cause for action with regards to the contract and the consortia, we're behind you 100%. That's the message that Queen's Park really should be sending. I'm not sure that kind of a demand, I don't want to say it's a threatening letter, but a demand letter. I don't know how it gets light rail running safely and without interruption. I think it's unnecessary. I don't think that's what partners do. And the message from Queen's Park has to be one that's like, we want to get this thing right. We're here to help you. We're behind you. Okay.
So what do you think the motivation for such a letter may have been, John?
It could be, it could be just to appear tough. I mean, the question is here's a letter that's been sent that all of a sudden becomes very public. So, I think why would they send? Why would the government allow that letter to be sent? And like to appear to be tough instead of being collaborative. That's kind of a mark of the federal government. I don't want to read too much into it. I just don't think I just can't see how it's helpful to transit riders in Ottawa.
Well, the province is a major stakeholder in this project, as it is in public transit projects in every major municipality, right? All across the province. So should it not seek assurances like this when it's, it's big government money at stake here? Right, John?
It should, yeah. Well, put it this way: we're all partners with the same, and we all have the same shareholders, so we all have to work together.
Right.
And so, what I think they should seek assurances, 100%. But what they should be saying is, in seeking those assurances, if you need some help with the Transportation Safety Board recommendations or anything else to do with any actions that may be required with regard to the contract, we're here to help. We've got some expertise. We're going to back you up. You know what? That sends the right message to your partner, but it also sends the message to the people who built this that the weight of three governments will be brought upon them if they don't actually deliver on what the contract asks for.
Okay, you mentioned Metrolinx. Metrolinx has morphed now into this massive branch of the government with enormous influence over public transit all across Ontario. What role could it play in sorting out any of our light rail problems here in Ottawa?
Well, they're building projects similar to, I think, the Eglinton Crosstown they're using the same system that we are in Ottawa. So there's a lot of expertise, a lot of technical expertise, not just with the actual trains and tracks and the systems that are there, but also with things like big contracts, like the one that this city, and I would argue the federal government, the province has entered into with the consortium. Okay. Kind of expertise that's, that they do this all the time. This is their main line of business. So I think there's a lot of expertise to be offered in there. It's been used before by the city in different projects. So I think offering it and standing behind the city is the way to send a message to the consortium.
Ottawa Liberal MPP John Fraser is with me this morning. Let's switch gears and talk about the announcement yesterday about raising the minimum wage. What are your thoughts on that to $15 an hour, John?
Well, I'm sure that that people at minimum wage are happy that they received this raise. The reality is good news that's 3 years too late. So one of the first things Doug Ford did when he came into government here was gut Bill 148 and removed things, worker protections like equal pay for equal work, paid sick days, and then he cut the raise to the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And that costs every family, actually by the time it's implemented, it'll be now about $6,700. Not each family, but each worker, $6,700. So there's more if two people are working, more if somebody has more than one job. And that made for some tough choices over the last 3 years for some people that had to do with, paying the rent or heating or buying groceries, picking up a prescription, kids' clothes, a school trip. And so it's really hard to undo that damage, and it didn't need to happen. It didn't save one nickel on the Ontario budget. And the premise that somehow a minimum wage was job killing, raising the minimum wage was job killing, it's like, we have a Nobel Prize-winning economist, David Card, who, here from Ontario, who says, look, raising wages doesn't affect employment rates. That's what his research is.
Well, there was fear, though. There was fear that your government, you were in government at the time, that your government was moving too fast back in 2017, moving from $11.60 an hour so quickly to 14 and then up to 15, from 11.60 to 15 in just 13 months, John. You recognize there were business people who were worried.
Yeah, there were people. It is a change. Here's the thing that I think many of us knew back then was, what people were getting wasn't a living wage, and it's pretty hard. And we can see in the pandemic how important ensuring people have a living wage is, because the people who like the people who work in the grocery stores, the cashiers, the clerks, cooks, cleaners, all those people make our everyday lives far easier. And what happened when the government cut that raise to the minimum wage, it made their lives harder. Right? So, we have to make sure that people can, I want to say thrive, and not just survive, but thrive. And so I'm glad that the minimum wage is there for people right now. Mm-hmm. It should have been there 3 years ago, because it would have, Yep. Here's the other thing.
Okay, very quickly.
Why is Doug Ford doing this now? Because
why do you think he's doing it now?
There's an election on June 2nd.
Right.
He wants us to believe that he's been born again. And he's now converted to be the champion of the working person. And I just don't buy it.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right, John, thanks for coming on this morning. Nice to hear from you.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Talk soon. Bye-bye. Yep. John Fraser. That's the opposition point of view on what Doug Ford announced yesterday. But also coming up, we'll hear from the Labour Minister. Monty McNaughton will join me just before noon. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
101 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Wednesday, November 3rd. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 2 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. Ministry of Transportation says because of issues with Phase 1 of LRT, including 3 under review or investigation by the Transportation Safety Board, it wants assurances for the safety of the system. So the province is not releasing a $60 million holdback on that Phase 1 funding until those conditions on safety of the LRT are met. The city is dealing with its budget this morning. All departments sending their estimates to council for final approval. If passed as is, there will be a 3% hike on your property tax, but no word yet on other charges you face from the city, like your water bill. Ontario's Ministry of Transportation says more than 400,000 road tests have been cancelled due to the COVID pandemic. The province has given notice or novice drivers with licenses expiring between March of 2020 and December 31st next year until the end of next year to pass tests needed to maintain or upgrade their licenses. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
And 1310 AM.
It's time to score your political fix. I'm looking forward to it. Susan Smith is here, Principal Bluesky Strategy Group. Good morning, Susan.
Good morning, Rob.
Great to hear from you. And Chris Day is President Winston Wilmont. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rob. Good morning, Susan.
Yeah.
Good morning, Chris.
Wonderful to hear from everyone. I was just reading how there are 277 Canadian delegates in Glasgow. We should have just assembled it, fueled up the jet, and headed there and done the show live from Glasgow. That would have been great. But nevertheless, here we are all together in Ottawa. Susan, what are your impressions of the announcements made so far by Mr. Trudeau at COP26?
Well, first of all, Rob, I'd like to commend you on being able to pronounce Glasgow, because I'm shocked at how many people in the Canadian media can't. So I'm very happy that a leading figure like you can do that.
I will take it. I will take any compliment.
My Scottish mother, Joni, would be very happy to know that, too. She's from Glasgow.
Okay, all right.
I think the Prime Minister and the announcements in COP, I don't think it's any surprise what Mr. Trudeau has announced in COP, or at COP. He campaigned on doing something about climate change. He campaigned on reducing GHG emissions. He was elected by Canadians. Either he or the Progressive Agenda was elected by Canadians to move on climate change. And as he stood and said in Glasgow this week, we had a town called Lytton. I mean, it's not that long ago that the town of Lytton spontaneously combusted. So as a country, we have to do something about that. So I don't think any big surprise there. Canadians could know or foreshadow what Mr. Trudeau was going to announce. He was just reminding the rest of the world what it is we're doing as a country.
Okay. Chris, what are your impressions thus far of the Prime Minister and his announcements at COP26?
Oh, no one is arguing that more needs to be done on these files, and it's always the modality. These COPs, and I've been to these before, these are exercises in hypocrisy and frustration. Like literally tens of thousands of delegates took hundreds of jets and cavalcades of cars, many of which are left idling while leaders expel hot air of their own indoors. All of it, let's be honest, could have been done by a Zoom meeting. There has been some stuff that's come out of COP on limiting and reversing deforestation. That's excellent. But the global price on carbon and emissions regulation caps, those are tough sells internationally. Mr. Trudeau's essentially been saying, look, we're hobbling our resources sector, and we hope you'll do the same. It's a tough sell domestically, too. Gas, groceries, and everything else is increasing in price, and he's basically signaling to consumers, get ready for much more of that. I also noted a very interesting disconnect between what Mark Carney and the new Environment Minister, Stephen Guilbeault, have been saying about the role of nuclear in the coming energy transition. And I think that's going to be a very interesting tension and potential policy incoherence that Mr. Trudeau is going to have to try and navigate.
Well, yeah, that's interesting, too, because it's completely out of step with what Seamus O'Regan was saying. And Seamus O'Regan was just shuffled out of natural resources. He was a proponent for, especially this module, like smaller nuclear.
Small modular reactors. The Liberal platform, I don't have it in front of me, but the Liberal platform was supportive of small modular reactors. So it will be interesting, perhaps, I think, in that particular case, about how the Environment Minister learns his portfolio as he learns all the nooks and crannies of it. There's lots he's familiar with as he comes in through the door.
Sure.
But I think the policy direction has been set, and I doubt that will shift too much.
Yeah, but it's a climate emergency. The government declared a climate emergency. Can we even afford to have an environment and climate change minister who has to learn on the job, Susan?
Well, I mean, I don't think he's learning on the job, but there are lots of components to the file. There are very few people that show up 100% knowing exactly what they're supposed to do on day one, though we've got a mandate there. So I think we have to be reasonable. But in terms of can we have a couple of things, Chris was noting the rising cost of things.
Yeah.
There's no question things have, the price of gas and other things have been going up. I think that there is a straight line attribution to the pandemic and the labor shortages and the supply chain shortages that we've had. When things become more scarce, the price goes up, or when things are in higher demand, the price goes up. Watch how lumber has gone back down again. It was crazy high last summer.
Sure.
So those immediate inflationary issues are happening all around the world, and it has been as a result of the pandemic. But it's definitely something the government has to take in mind. But in terms of climate change, if we don't do something about it, those higher prices are going to continue. When you have forest fires, lumber burning down, when you have floods that wash out communities, when you have drought, that means farmers can't grow the food that we all eat, things cost more. And so we have to do something about climate change. We have to. It's walking and chewing gum. It's not an either or. It's a both and.
I wonder if the Prime Minister and his government is at risk of appearing out of touch with the day-to-day needs of Canadians right now. We're in this higher inflationary environment. Record high prices for gasoline. People are feeling it at the grocery store, and they see the Prime Minister's kind of jetting all over the place here, making hobnobbing with the world elite. I guess I don't know, Chris. Do you want to weigh in there? Whether this is really is this really the priority for Canadians? I get it; it's a priority for the government, but is it a priority for Canadians, really?
Well, I don't disagree with Susan.
Okay.
That there is something has to be done. It's always the modality. I do think, though, when you are going into people's pockets and essentially saying we're deliberately raising prices on this because of policy choices that we're making, you'd better make the case for it and come up with some really good policy alternatives. And again, the new Environment Minister seems not to have read his party's own platform on nuclear and stuck his foot in his mouth. And again, if you don't get this policy mix right, there's an incoherence that does risk taking over, and a seeming out of touch mentality that could take hold.
These are the comments, by the way, that Chris is talking about. Mr. Guilbeault on nuclear. And is that a potential solution to reduce greenhouse gases because it's zero-emission energy? Go ahead, Dave.
I think it's up to every country to decide which low-emission technology they want to go for. Clearly, what we're seeing right now is around the world, and it's true in Canada, is that renewable energies are becoming very difficult to compete with. I mean, we're producing wind energy and solar energy for anywhere between 2 and 3 cents a kilowatt hour. It's very difficult for any other kind of technology to compete with this in Canada and in around the world.
Well, we're not doing that in Ontario. I don't know what he's talking about there. But
Mark Carney basically said that.
Yeah, you know what? I don't find a huge disconnect for that. If he's talking about the cheapest renewable energy, of course it's wind and solar. But we know in this country, we're a big, huge country, and we're a cold country.
Right.
We need to do more than just wind and solar.
But again, okay.
So I'm okay. I'm okay with that statement there. I also don't think, it's important to remind. I think it's important to remind people that the price on carbon. Canadians get a rebate from the government of Canada and the provinces where there is a price on carbon. Right, so there have been mitigation measures for people. They see it on their income tax. It's automatically checked there, and then they receive a check.
Yeah, and they're going to quarterly, I guess, like the GST rebates or whatever, right?
So,
okay.
And Rob, just another thing, just a small thing, right?
Sure.
I want everybody to think about grocery bags going into the store. I bet almost everybody brings something, some kind of bag to bring their groceries home in, because they don't want to be charged 5 cents at the grocery store. Think about how quickly that behavioral changes. And I bet there are listeners, I've done it, who get to the cash and they're like, oh my God, I'm sorry, I forgot my bags and I have to pay for grocery bags. That's a very small behavioral change that people have learned to do. That's the kind of thing I think that as we change and as gas prices go up, people think differently about the kinds of vehicles they buy. Do they take public transit? Can they combine an errand? Can they catch a ride?
Yeah.
Those are the kinds of behavioral changes that we need, all incremental, to help with climate change.
Here, again, what I want to come back to is kind of the retail politics of it all, though. There are a couple of polls out recently. Angus Reid, just this week, asks, the Liberal Party made a series of promises during the election campaign. Which two would you most like to see implemented? Number one, higher tax on banks and insurance companies. Interesting. And number two, temporary ban on foreign home buyers. So that to me indicates wealth inequality, affordability issues come to mind there for me. And down the list is net zero emission electricity grid by 2035. Net zero electricity grid by 2035. The only climate change related option was 5th on the list out of 7. Okay. And Abacus, policy priorities for the new parliament. Top priority, improve the healthcare system. Top priority. Getting more people vaccinated and getting life, quote, back to normal. Number 3, finding ways to reduce the cost of living. And number 4, deal more with climate change. So I guess Canadians are saying it's a priority. It's not my top priority. It's kind of down the list, 4th or 5th, Chris. Like, it's not my top priority.
Yeah, I mean, that list sounds suspiciously like it could have, come from a survey in 1988 as well. Healthcare and affordability and, climate change at the time was acid rain and various others. So, it has always been thus. And I think everyone who thinks about these issues recognizes that climate change is a very, very real and pressing concern. And we'll have all kinds of spillover effects to every single aspect of our life if we don't get it right. But the question is, what are you doing to get it right?
All right, look, we'll stop here. When we come back, I want to talk about the Conservatives that have been in the news. There's Aaron O'Toole, but also Doug Ford, your working class hero. Okay. Susan's ready to go on that one, I think. Susan Smith, Chris Day, it's your political fix, and this is City News.
Opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, we had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. and we decided to open. We, of course, essential business, so been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Withhold online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Withhold famous. I want to make the Withhold place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food, food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian, so all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches, we focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia babcia house, how she cooked, I wanted this love and this food over here, because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Withhold Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box, and do it.
The opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
A working class hero is something to be. They hurt you at home and they hit you at school. They hate you if you're clever and they despise a fool.
All right, Doug Ford. I guess we're talking about Doug Ford, the working class hero. Part 2, Political Fix. Susan Smith, Bluesky Strategy Group. Chris Day is the president of Winston, Wilmont. We could talk about Aaron O'Toole because his position on mandatory vaccines for MPs will probably be different in, it's not lunchtime yet. So let's talk about Doug Ford, working class hero. Now, the attack ads, they don't call them attack ads, they're contrast ads, from the New Democrats has been what? Doug Ford's not in it for the little guy. Doug Ford in it for the little guy. Please. You remember the attack ad? Yeah. So
Doug Ford says he's for the little guy. But what happened to that? Every chance he gets, Ford fails your family. When workers need paid sick days, Doug denies them. When local businesses need help, Ford sides with the big box stores instead. And with a crisis in seniors' care, Ford protects owners' profits instead of protecting the people who live there. For the little guy, please. Doug Ford, here for his buddies, not for you.
All right. Okay. As surprised as I am that Andrea Horwath is still the leader of the New Democrats and will lead that party into the next election, I have to give them credit. That is a really good ad. Like that line, Doug Ford, please. I mean, that hits. But now we have this, reinvention underway, and Monty McNaughton's going to join me later in the program. He's the labor minister. Yesterday, it's a $15 an hour minimum wage. In the run-up to that announcement, with all sorts of other announcements and non-compete clauses, easier foreign credential recognition, the right to disconnect. Chris Day, what's up with the reinvention of Doug Ford?
Well, I think there are some absolute winners in what you've seen in recent weeks from Minister McNaughton and Premier Ford. The foreign credential recognition and bathroom access for critical supply chain and transit workers, those are absolute winners and long overdue. the non-compete clauses. I am told that these are great things. This is a great move for the innovation economy of tomorrow. The right to disconnect, I personally am more split on this one because, while I understand that burnout and the need for boundaries is very real and mental health needs to be a priority, as someone who lives or dies on the sole basis of whether or not my clients feel well served, I'm not sure that I personally can ever get there. But I do think that there needs to be a more robust conversation in all workplaces about what availability looks like and how that's compensated. And if not, the market then will likely decide, as we're seeing in the U.S., by the way, where people are leaving their employers in droves in search of better balance and all the things that they've come to realize are important over the course of the pandemic. So, again, I'm split on that right to disconnect piece. But on minimum wage, we're in a completely different context than 3 years ago. And while a lot of businesses will surely struggle with this and pass costs on to consumers, I think it's 760,000 people will get a boost in pay. And if that encourages more people to get back into the workforce post-pandemic, that's great. I think on balance, you're seeing a mix of policy proposals here that are winners for people that the Ford Voter Coalition needs to keep and grow in the lead up to June 2022. And I think you'll probably see more of it in the update of Thursday.
Just before we jump to Susan, just a sec, Susan. How symbolically important is it, Chris, do you think, to have Smokey Thomas there, OPSU, Public Sector Union, 180,000 members. 180,000 members. He's there at this announcement yesterday. And Jerry Dias of Unifor, which is the largest private sector union in Canada. What do you think about those two union leaders standing beside the premier as he makes this announcement yesterday?
I don't know that the union leadership in this country is necessarily in full representation mode of its members, frankly. But I do think for workers it's a good thing, and anything that helps workers.
But it's got to be it's a score for Ford to have them there, though, wouldn't you think?
Well, I think it hurts Andrea Horvath more than anyone, frankly.
Oh, I see. Yeah, sure. Susan, the reinvention of Doug Ford?
Yeah. I found this handy-dandy clock online that tells me it's 210 days, 23 hours, 7 minutes, and 37 seconds till the provincial election. And that is 100% what this is all about. But I think Ford is on the right track. He needs to get people working in Ontario. He needs, we need to both attract new workers and get the people who've been out of the workforce because of the pandemic back working again in order to keep the economy moving. Some things, as Chris pointed out, are long overdue, like the foreign credential recognition. I think people will be very happy for the minimum wage, but they will also not forget that Doug Ford canceled that minimum wage. So that's something to be considered. And as far as the union leaders joining him, I think absolutely they had to be there. And of course they would be there for an announcement about a minimum wage increase. But you can bet if there are other things going on that they're not happy about, they'll be back. They'll be back with their brickbats for Premier Ford. So I think they're there for now, but I don't think they're there forever.
All right. We got a few minutes left here. How much time? I have 3 minutes, 4 minutes? Okay. We have time for this, I think. Because, Susan, you call Ottawa home, right? Ottawa's your home. You're home, right? Chris, you're an Ottawa guy, Chris. So
proud hometown,
right?
Ottawa guy, yes, indeed.
Light rail. 45 days. Today is 45 days without light rail. People are really suffering. Thank goodness most of the public service is working from home. Gosh. This would just be awful. It's awful if you rely on public transit as it is. You have no other option. You can't Uber every day or whatever the case might be. So certainly this is not a great time politically for Mayor Watson, with a decision expected in a few weeks' time about his own political future and whether he's going to run again in the municipal election next fall, about a year from now. But now this letter drops and it hits the news early this morning, that the Ford government is threatening to withhold $60 million of provincial funding, because all of these big light rail projects are all cost shared, provincial funding for Ottawa's LRT, until the province is satisfied that all of these problems are sorted out. What do you think about that, Chris? What do you read into that? You have knowledge of all of these levels of government. Well, what do you read into that?
Well, I have always said, Rob, that the problems with the LRT that we've seen over the course of years have the real long-term impact of eroding rider trust, but they also run the risk of eroding funder trust, and that's what you're seeing. I think that this is a prudent bit of due diligence, and I would be worried, frankly, if a government wasn't looking at what has been happening here and saying, before we hand over tens or hundreds of billions or millions more of taxpayer dollars, do you have your proverbial S together? And is it going to be safe? And will it have the benefits that you've claimed in trying to secure this money? That is eminently reasonable. I think the mayor's office said as much in their statements to media this morning.
Okay. Susan?
Well, I think it's another torch on Minister Watson to make sure that the Rideau Transit Group et al. Get the train moving as quickly as possible. But if it delays the further construction or the further online ability of the next phase of the project, I don't think that's helpful. So sure, the province has a right to say, yeah, you guys have to get your acts together. This is absolutely ridiculous that the train has been offline for 45 days. Imagine in Toronto if the TTC was offline for 45 days. Yeah. I mean, I think people in Ottawa are being taken for granted and treated exceptionally poorly in this case, and it's mind-boggling to me that there were safety issues that have been unresolved for this amount of time.
Yep.
So I think it's a whack from the province to the mayor.
Right, but you just had that countdown, Susan. You just had that countdown clock in front of you until the next election. Do you think there's a political component to this? Light rail is a wedge issue in the provincial election?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, positively. Okay. All right. Okay.
I don't think that the bigger picture piece is at risk over the long term, but I do think, Rob, that the LRT file has been managed in such a way, and I use managed very loosely here, in such a way that funders and riders need to have their trust rebuilt. And that is an uphill battle for city officials at this point.
What a great discussion this morning. Thank you so much to the both of you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. Yeah, Susan Smith from Bluesky and Chris Day, president of Winston, Wilmont. Coming up next, it's the Talk Back Hour. Something a little different, a little more big picture this morning as we talk about generational fairness. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com